And I'm going to hand over to our final speakers of the day. So Francesca and Peter, I know, Peter, you've got your screen, your camera on, so please do go ahead, share your screens, and yeah, looking forward to hearing your talk.
Hi everyone. The first 3-4 minutes introductory talk. We organized a session at the Conservation Technology Conference, Bridging Biologging and Stationary Passive Environmental Sensors for Conservation, which is a long expression to say bridging biologging with camera trapping and audio sensors, essentially, having especially terrestrial systems in mind. And we were really excited to try and bring all these different streams together for several reasons. Okay, which hopefully we can see, right? But we immediately identified the fact that this would be first and foremost a data problem. So when we say that we need to have these streams of information coming all together, it means that we have to deal with data, and we have to understand what data, what metadata they are, and how we can put them together for a certain reason. What the reason is, I'm sure is clear to everyone on this call, because biodiversity data must be available to the community, and they are not the end of the journey, rather the beginning. Since we need to urgently close the science to policy link to estimate indicators for essential biodiversity values, ecosystem services. And we also know that within this community, and particularly the WILDLABS, a lot of effort is given to indeed support this link. Last but not least, the emergence of MoveOn. And for this very reason, it is nice to delve a bit into the diversity of data, some of which have been excellently presented today. First of all, movement data. We had wonderful bats moving around. I was so much impressed. Then camera trapping, which is also in a huge vibe, and audio sensors. We saw some excellent examples too from underwater. The question that we should ask ourselves is, with all such data actually produced, are they indeed used and preserved for conservation? Indeed, the data are expensive to collect, but they are not so often used beyond their project scope, even less at a global scale. And one of the reasons is that they are hard to find or they're not published, and therefore they are rarely included as indicators for EBVs, or even unknown, that most EBVs do not even consider, for example, movement, which is one of the very reasons why MoveOn started to emerge as something innovatory. And to sum up, they are rarely integrated, combined, and multiplied. I will give 2 quick points about biologging data. We have worked for a long time together with Sarah Davidson and others on the pathway that the biologging data should take to be in the sweet spot of being shared in the community and used for conservation. Of course, the first, the baseline is that data should be fair and respect trust. But also there is a series of steps that we could consider. So for example, first of all, the fact that data are likely to be ingested by repositories that are made to consistently support them. And the second relevant point that was already made a few years ago is that data and metadata should be really kept tightly together, because data without metadata doesn't mean anything. It's just a random picture or a random audio clip. And finally, when data and metadata are kept together, it is possible to translate them into products that should be, that's what we said in this early paper, easily discoverable through a global search engine acting as a meta repository. So this was like envisioned a few years back. Sorry, I just take 1 second to advertise the International Biologging Society. It's free. Please sign up. We co-manage the animal movement group in the Wild Labs, and we have brand new social media, and we will have our great symposium next year. End of the advertisement. We go now to the second working example, this time talking about camera trapping. As we know, camera trapping and similarly also audio sensors have very different steps that go from picture management, so the actual management of the media, the storing of the media, the identification or classification of the actual biological content of the media, which should then managed in terms of information, hopefully according to data standards, and then should be made accessible in repositories. But then when we have this repeated multiple times, for example, for different repositories, for different streams and initiatives, how can we take everything together? And a few years back, we asked ourselves what would be the barriers for this to happen. The first barrier are data standards, so that we talk the same language, and luckily this really happens already in camera trapping thanks to CamTrapDP, the data standard for camera trapping data. But the second barrier that we have identified talking a couple of years back was the possibility to really put data together, like make data visible and accessible on some sort of a platform, like an inventory of projects. And so why am I offering these two examples is to show that we have been talking for several years about biologging data streams, camera trapping data streams, envisioning that we needed data standards, but data metadata tied up together, but also the possibility to have a place where to access studies that should be accessible for the several purposes, and in particular conservation. And so now, after this introduction, I'll give the word to Peter to say that maybe we actually got there. Mainly Peter got there. So thank you very much. And Peter, the floor is yours.
Thanks. So I'll skip to the introduction that Francesca wonderfully did. And so, as she said, so for animal tracking and also for camera trapping, we have both data management platforms, data standards are coming, and we have publishing tools to get the data out there. So this is for animal tracking and for camera trapping. And what we now have and what we want to introduce are two new data portals, Wild Moves, which is an animal tracking data portal, and Wild Album, which is a camera trap data portal. So these are not websites where you put new data or you publish your data. This is really websites that connects to published data sets already out there and give you a discovery tool to be able to find data that's already out there. So it's not reinventing the wheel or not yet another repository for data. It is trying to connect all these initiatives that already exist so you can discover data sets. And these two portals have a couple of features. There's a dataset search, which allows you to do a full text search, and you can filter by country, publisher, project ID. There's also for each dataset, there's a dataset page where you can find all that metadata about a single study or dataset. There's also metrics you can find if the data are attached, so you can see when were data collected, where were data collected. There's a citation mechanism where you can see how these data sets were cited and where they were cited. You can link back to the source data if the source data are available in the original platform where they are published. And you can also download the data directly from these dataset pages. Even cooler is that there is a search available across these data sets. So on the top, you see an image search for Wild Album, and on the bottom you see a map of all the data across these data sets on Wild Moves. And again, you are able to filter across these data sets on scientific name, country, date, publisher, and show them in different way, either as a table or as images. And for your filtered data, you're also able to download that subset of the data. These two websites were created by a team of volunteers, and we're also translated in Spanish by Claudia Meneses, and they are hosted by WildLabs. So thanks WildLabs for hosting these to have a bit of a branding and a permanent home. They were originally an idea from several projects, Big Picture, which is a European project on camera trapping, and also in MoveBon, it was suggested, hey, we should really publish more of this animal tracking data sets so they can be used in EBVs. But these two data portals are now the first visible outputs where you can see those data sets pop up. And most of the functionality is provided by GBIF. So the way it works is you can publish your data to GBIF. GBIF is the general database for all biodiversity data. It's an intergovernmental initiative, provides free and open access data, open access to biodiversity data. And you also have national help desk and really well-embedded national nodes often to help you publish data to GBIF. So the question then is, well, how can I include my data in these two portals? And in blue, you will see it for the animal tracking data, and in orange for the camera trap data. And the way it works is you publish your data set to GBIF as you would normally do with any biodiversity data that you can publish, and you can use the regular publication mechanisms for that. And then Wild Moves and Wild Album basically use a filter to select camera trapping data or animal tracking data, and then show only those data on the more dedicated website that you now have in Wild Moves and Wild Album. So that means, for example, Lucia, your bat tracking data that you have, if you have it on MoveBank, and you would republish or export that to GBIF, and we're working with MoveBank, that can happen semi-automatically, so it's not on the researcher to do all that work, then it would automatically appear on Wild Moves. And the same, Matt, for you, even though it's audio data, we're planning to extend the CamTrap DP format that is used for camera trapping data sets to acoustic data. That would mean that your acoustic data set would also pop up on Wild Album, which is why we chose Album, so it can apply to both images and sounds. So your data sets would end up there automatically. There are current limitations, so this is based on GBIF infrastructure. So we are parsing and crunching the data to Darwin Core, which is the general standard used by GBIF, and the same for the metadata. So some very specific filters that we would want, like filtering on sampling protocol, or is the source data available or not, or a better visualization of tracks that is not there. But it is a great discovery mechanism to find data across a whole number of source management systems. And we currently also don't have capacity or funding to really develop new features. We want to put it out there, so it's a bit of a place where people can discover, and also to encourage people to publish their data to GBIF, which then makes it widely available to many, many users, and it can be included in essential biodiversity variables or conservation efforts, but it would also end up on one of these two portals. So the way you can get involved now is really spreading the news, like, hey, these two websites exist, and maybe write project proposals to publish more data to GBIF or work on the data standards or best practice guides. This is really the first step it's the end step of the publication flow. And the thing I really like about that, if the data set end up in one of these two portals, it means a lot of things have gone right, as in the data are well formatted, people were fine with having this data be available, it went through the publication steps, it has a DOI. So it's really the star that you get for getting it all the way to the end. And we're working with many initiatives to make this process a lot easier. So it really becomes a tool where, for example, in MoveBon, we set the aim of, let's try and publish at least 1,000 animal tracking data sets and see where we get from there. So thank you.
Thank you so much. It's amazing. Super exciting that this is launched. And we've got a comment and a question in the chat. First comment is from Daniela asking, we would like to have a copy also. So please, connect with Daniela over that. And we've also got a question from Katie. Would data producers be able to track the studies that have downloaded or users publications of the data they shared into Moves albums?
Yes, so that is something that GBIF does automatically. Anytime you use the data from GBIF, you download data. That download gets a DOI, And if you cite that DOI as in that is the data I used, it automatically tracks back to all the data sets that have contributed to this download. So on any dataset page that you go to on GBIF right now, you will be able to see the number of citations, and then you can break it down and like how many peer-reviewed papers, how many reports. They do really a huge job because it is semi-automatically collected, all the citations of those DOIs of GBIF download data. So yeah, they do that.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Do we have any more questions for Peter and Francesca?
Maybe while we wait, if I can add something, and Peter can always technically correct me. As he has explained, we can trace back to the identification for example, MoveBank, so that every time the data set is cited, is always possible to also reconstruct the original, the trace back the original data set, which is also very relevant. And this is not possible for all platforms, it's always possible for GBIF at the moment, but it's working. Yeah, it is there, and we know it's one of the very cool points that as we move forward.
Fantastic. And I see Peter's added an example into the chat.
Peter, will you answer the comment?
Sorry, on bioacoustics. Yeah, so that is one of the submissions of the 520 submissions to WildLab Awards is to extend ChemTrapDB to bioacoustics data. This is something there's a lot of interest in the bioacoustics community to really also have a simple format to exchange data. So we hope to do that. And that means that all the publishing tools that exist for the ChemTrapDB standard can then immediately be used for acoustic data, meaning they would also end up on WildAlbum automatically. So the nice thing with these two portals is we can now leave our hands off because it will grow automatically by publishing data to GBIF. So yeah, there can be a lot of separate projects all contributing, all working in parallel and contributing to the same goal.
Fantastic. Lots of good stuff coming in the future then. Any more questions before we wrap up? We've got enough time on the main call for maybe one more question. Okay, it looks like we might be good then. Well, thank you very much. I would like to thank all of our excellent speakers today, Izabela, Lucia, Matthew, Francesca, and Peter. Thank you very much for making this such an interesting and super diverse variety hour. Please, thanks Robin for the applause. And please add any thank yous in the chat as well. Thank you very much from me too for joining. I've been your host, Henry, and I look forward to seeing you at the next one. But thank you so much, everyone.